episode of Sports Brawl. We got two great competitors here today. We have Jacob E. West coming off a loss. He's at 0-1, and then he is facing Andy Wood, who is making his Sports Brawl debut. This is going to be a terrific match. Two great competitors going at it. But before we get to the match, I got two of my guys right here to help judge. We have Kevin Pause. Kevin, how do you feel about this match?
After looking over the questions and knowing these competitors pretty well, I'm feeling pretty good about this match. I'm interested in hearing what they have to say, and looking forward to judging this match.
Awesome. And also we have the villain himself, Haven Pendergast. Haven, how you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic, brother. Man, it's good to be here with you guys. You know, we got two players that never battled before in this format, so I believe this match is going to be very exciting. And, you know, I'm just can't wait to judge it, brother.
All right, sounds good. So, for those of you at home who have not watched a Sports Brawl match before, here's how it's going to work. For each round, for the first 4 rounds we do, it's going to be a 1-minute opening argument from each competitor. After that, we go into a 5-minute open debate. Competitors will go back and forth arguing about the topic at hand. And then after that 5 minutes runs out, there will be a 1-minute closing debate for the first 4 rounds. Each competitor will alternate on that. And then once those rounds are over, we judges will determine who had the better round. And yeah, first 2, 3 wins. Is everybody ready? Jacob, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Andy, how about you?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, judges, we good?
Oh yeah.
Then let's get right into it with your first question coming from the world of the NFL, the National Football League. And our question posed was, what was the worst trade of all time? So since Jacob has a little bit of experience, you will start first with your opening argument. Your 1 minute starts whenever you start talking.
All right. So as far as the worst trade in NFL history, you have to look at what didn't make sense when it happened. So we're going to go back to a year known as 1996, a couple years back, on draft day. So whenever teams were building up their future, the Los Angeles Rams, yes, that's right, they were still in Los Angeles at this time. No, they did move to St. Louis. They'd been there for a year now. I'm sorry. The St. Louis Rams select with the 6th overall pick, Lawrence Phillips, the running back for Nebraska. Now, the only issue with this pick was that they already had a running back named the Bus, Jerome Bettis. So it would have made sense, hey, let's have a 2-back system, let's go. But they didn't do that. No, the St. Louis Rams made the boneheaded move of trading Jerome Bettis and a 3rd-round pick to the Pittsburgh Steelers for a 2nd-round pick in that draft and then next year's 4th-round pick.
That's a minute.
And that.
All right, coming down to the wire there for his opening argument. And Andy, the floor is yours whenever you start talking.
Okay. So I am going to say someone who, and I have to be honest, it's not a sport I follow, especially not back in the 80s. But in the 80s, there was a man called Steve Young, and he moved from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to the San Francisco 49ers. And the reason, and I will obviously elaborate in detail, but you have to think about in the trades to make it the worst trade, it has to be losing a player who is going to add significant value to the team that you are losing. And Steve Young is one of the greatest passers of all time in the NFL. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, not the best team. In terms of playing style, in terms of what he would add to the players around him, he was more of a loss than I think Jacob's pick was. And I will elaborate in more detail in the main arguments.
All right, sounds good. So we have our opening arguments, and your 5 minutes will start in a little bit. But if judges, if any one competitor starts rambling on for too long, feel free to intercede and encourage a more open back and forth debates take place. But I'm sure that will not happen. We have two great competitors here today. So, gentlemen, your 5 minutes will begin whenever someone starts talking.
Okay, so I don't really want to get bogged down on sort of who's got the better numbers here, because obviously both our players have excellent numbers. It's going to be sort of a meaningless argument. So I think we have to talk about sort of the tactical decisions behind this. What I will say for you is that you said there was no sense behind the decision. The season before, saying the Rams traded Betis, they brought a new coach in who did not want to play a rushing style. He wanted to play a passing style. Betis is a rusher. So he doesn't fit the system that the manager's playing. And so the season he comes in, Betis has a significant Drumbers knockoff. Now, knowing that this is the case, that he has this player, talented though he may be, who doesn't fit the system, I think right there is your logic behind trading him. It's not it's not an ideal move, but it's a move that has to be made. He's not fitting in. His numbers are dropping off. He's got to go elsewhere. So I actually think, although he's very talented, your guy wasn't actually huge value lost to the team in the end.
Wait, did you just say he wasn't a huge value loss at the end?
Not in terms of what he was contributing at the time.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. He did have a bad season. The 2 years before that, though, he rushed for over 1,000 yards each season. The reason they traded him was because they drafted another running back. They wanted Bettis to be a fullback. They didn't draft Lawrence Phillips knowing, hey, we're going to get rid of Bettis. They wanted to keep him. They didn't want to utilize him. He was one of the best rushers his first 2 years, and he did have that drop off. Okay, so what? But he still had a ton more years left in him, and they just decided to go with someone new. If you want to say the value lost in Steve Young, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, I'll give you that. But he played for the Buccaneers for 2 years. He was 3-16 as a starter. At a losing record, had horrible stats, and then he gets traded to the Tampa Bay, or he gets traded to the 49ers. Guess who he sat behind for 5 years? Joe Montana, another all-time great quarterback. So the fact that you're saying that they lost an all-time great, whenever they had him, he wasn't an all-time great. He had to sit behind one of the best and learn. And if you look at those 5 years he had with the 49ers, sitting behind Joe Montana, yeah, he was able to play some. And the little bit he was able to play, he was not great. Lawrence Phillips, his first year, he actually only stayed for 2 years.
2 minutes remaining.
He only stayed for 2 years. Where did I write it down? Yeah, so he was on the team for 2 years. He rushed a total of 1,265 yards and 12 touchdowns in 2 seasons. Jerome Bettis, in his first year with the Steelers, rushed for 1,431 yards and 11 touchdowns. Several more yards, one less touchdown in half as many games. So, yes, the Rams were going for a more pass-heavy style. You still have to have a good running back, because you have play action. You have how you start the game, starting off running. End of the game, you need to be able to run it out if you're winning. And the Rams had it, and they just traded him away for nothing.
But again, I mean, yes, he's got very impressive numbers from his first 2 seasons, and that's because he was playing in a rushing team, so he can make lots of rushes. If he's not playing in a rushing team anymore, he's not going to make a lot of rushes. So therefore, you have to think, do I sacrifice this great player for someone who's going to play the system I want to play? And that's absolutely what they did. And it was the smart move at the time, because he was never going to replicate those numbers the way they were playing at that time. With terms of Steve Young, you could say, obviously, he's not the superstar that he would go on to be when he played for the Bucs, but he's a Heisman winner from college football. He's played in a Florida league. He's become the first pro footballer to pass for 300 yards and rush for 100 make 300 passes and rush for 100 in a single game. So clearly the quality is there. And if the Buccaneers have the patience to develop that talent, they can go on to great things. But unfortunately, they don't. Yes, he was in a losing record. He was in a bad side. There were bad players around him. That was acknowledged by the 49ers coach when he signed. He was a naturally talented player who was let down by the people around him. Sorry?
That's 5 minutes.
All right. Great debate. Okay. Great debate by both competitors, both having some very strong points and some strong rebuttals too. So we started with Jacob for the opening argument. So we're going to go to Andy for his closing. Whenever you start talking, your 1 minute closing will begin.
Yeah, I mean, the Buccaneers had a fantastic opportunity with a player, like I say, a Heisman winner with some excellent stats from local leagues before joining the NFL. They had an absolutely fantastic opportunity to develop an incredible talent who they knew would be a fantastic talent and build their team around him. They chose not to, and the 49ers went out in this case. And then for the Rams, they have a player who's very good and is putting up very good numbers, but now isn't fitting in the team dynamics. And unfortunately, you have to get rid of him in that way. We see that happens in all sports. All sort of great sports teams have sacrificed players who don't fit the system because it just doesn't always work like that. So I think the logic behind what the Rams did is far sort of there's more to it than I think what the Bucs did. And the Bucs, I think, would regret their decision an awful lot more.
All right, sounds good. And Jacob, your 1 minute closing begins whenever you start talking.
So a phrase that we hear commonly is hindsight's 2020. When the Buccaneers traded Steve Young, he was doing horrible. They drafted Vinny Testaverde that next year. Not great, but a little bit better. You said Steve Young was a Heisman winner. Guess what? There are so many Heisman winners in the NFL today who do not pan out. He was the first quarterback with 300 receiving yards, 100 yards rushing. Well, he did that with the 49ers. He did that like 7 years after being with the team. When that trade happened, it made sense. When the Steelers traded Jerome Bettis, or when the Steelers picked up Jerome Bettis from the Rams, everyone was saying that was a stupid pick for the Rams. Well, yes, he's not going to fit into their system. You still need a star running back. Every great team in the NFL right now with a pass-heavy scheme has a good running back. Well, yes, he's not going to get as many touches. He's still going to be able to perform whenever you need him. He's still going to be able to there. But he's still going to be able to execute.
All right, coming down to the wire there for Jacob. All right, so judges, thoughts on that round? We're going to start with Kevin. Who had the better argument in this round, and who should get this first point?
That was a really close round. Both made very valid arguments. I'll start with Jacobs. Going back to '96, the St. Louis trade, Jerome Bettis to Pittsburgh. Yeah, it was a dumb trade. Talking about how it was, he did only win one Super Bowl there. He was a 6-time Pro Bowler though in Pittsburgh, so. That doesn't look too good for St. Louis. Andy, Steve Young, he's one of my favorites. So you did pull a good one there. A little bit of tugging on the heartstrings. His value to Tampa Bay being a young team at the time in general. They were just bad. And yes, you're right, Jacob. He did sit behind Joe Montana. He couldn't have sat behind anybody better. So, yeah, of course, he's going to be a 3-time Super Bowl champ, a 3-time Pro Bowler. So I think Jacob wins this one just by a slight margin.
All right. So that's one for Jacob. So now, Haven, what are your thoughts on this one?
I'm gonna keep it short and sweet, because I know these guys got more stuff to list off, but I really have to give it to Jacob. He came with more facts in round, in his opening argument, round 2 in the 5-minute time frame. Andy was coming in with some facts, but he didn't really, explain why, Jacob's pick the Lawrence guy wasn't, in Bettis, he didn't really get to that, flush that out enough. And Jacob had more facts, even though Andy had a great player to debate, it just seemed like Jacob was more experienced when it came to the NFL.
Yeah. So with that, Jacob getting that first point, now we get into our second topic of today in the category of soccer, or as Andy would call it, football. What was the best UEFA Champions League finals? So we started with Jacob last time, so we're going to go to Andy on this one. Andy, your 1 minute starts whenever you start talking.
Okay, I'm going back to 1962 for this one, so this is going to be fun. Benfica played Real Madrid in the European Cup final, as it was known then. And these were the only two sides to have ever won the competition up to it. So this was the showpiece of showpieces. Real Madrid lead 3-2 at half-time. Ferenc Puskás, one of the all-time greats, hits a first-half hat-trick for them to get there. But in the second half, a young man by the name of Eusebio leads the Benfica fight back. They come through 5-3. It's a high-scoring game. It's a game where both sides take and lose the lead, and some of the greatest players in history were spectacling it and putting in huge performances. This is exactly what the European Cup or the Champions League was meant to be, the best of the best fighting it out, and it's not been done like that ever again.
All right, sounds good. Jacob, your time begins whenever you start talking.
All right, so Andy, you said it's never been done quite as good. You're right, because it's done better. I'm going to a lot more recent, 2005, one that I do remember watching, unlike yours. This was Liverpool taking on AC Milan. AC Milan just won the one before, blew out the team in the semifinals to get here. And Liverpool, kind of the Cinderella story. They had won 4 before in the previous years, but still that year they really weren't supposed to be there. But the Red Devils, they have a way. This game started off fantastic. There was a goal in the first minute, and it went down to the end. The game finished full time at a 3-3 tie, so they had to go on to penalty kicks. Liverpool took the penalty kicks, winning 3-2, so they took home the trophy. And it is the best Champions League.
All right, good selections by both competitors. It should be a very interesting one, considering that for us American judges here, soccer is probably one of our weaker topics in terms of knowledge. So 5-minute open debate begins whenever somebody starts talking, guys.
Okay. What I would say about AC Milan Liverpool, which was one of the first finals I remember watching personally, is that that's probably the game you would pick if you wanted to sort of make a nice Hollywood movie out of it. But if you want an actual game of football contested by heavyweights and the best players on the planet, you're going back to Benfica versus Real Madrid, because that's where they are. Real Madrid have a front three in that game. Ferenc Puskás, who got that hat-trick in the first half, one of the absolute legends of the game. Alfredo Di Stefano and Francisco Gento are both starting up front. Both of those have been honorary presidents of Real Madrid because of how much they've contributed to the club in the past. Like I say, Eusebio's coming through for Benfica, scoring that second half. He scored twice in the second half. So these are the best players in the world. Liverpool's team, like you said, weren't supposed to get there. In the first half, they played atrociously. It was embarrassing to watch. There's a 6-minute period in the second half where they revive and score, quite fortunately, if we're being honest. And then kind of the fact that it's so dramatic has kind of captured a zeitgeist. But for 90 minutes of pure quality football, you're going back to 1962. Both teams are on an even par, filled with world-class players, and it has all the same drama. Real Madrid take the lead. They go 2-0 up. Benfica pull it back to 2-2. Real Madrid, go 3-2 up at half-time. And then in the second half, Eusebio comes in, Benfica score 3 times, it's 5-3. So the lead's going back and forth. It's got the same drama, but with better quality.
Yeah, you said that it makes a better Hollywood story. Sometimes there's a reason they make they make movies out of it. A lot of times the Hollywood story is just a better story and more fun to watch. You say how you had, the best players in the game. We had some of the best players in the game too. Steven Gerrard, one of the legends of England soccer. Chevy Alonso also up there. Crespo. The fact that you're saying, yours is better because you had all-stars. We all had all-stars in our games. Yeah, you're right. We Liverpool. I don't know why I say we. I'm not a Liverpool fan, but Liverpool did play horrible in that first half. The ability to only give up 3 goals. They were very, very fortunate. But then they came back that halftime. I don't know what they put in the water because they came out with a fire. And started out on fire. They were able to capitalize on just a couple opportunities that they had. And yeah, Gerrard scored in the 54th minute, Smeiser in the 56th, and then Alonso in the 60th. And the great thing about Alonso's is it was on a penalty kick, but he missed the penalty kick. The goalie for AC Milan was able to block it, but he was so heads up that he sees the ball go off to the side. He runs and is able to kick it in. All 6 goals in my game were exciting. While yes, yours has more goals. If you look at it, I watched the highlights of yours. The first goal was a counterattack. Literally, the second half of the field was just Puskas in the goalie. That's an easy shot to take. The goalie was way too far forward. If he was a little bit back, he would have been able to block it. The second goal, the guy was about 35 yards back and just kicked it to kick it. The third one was a set piece. The 7th one, another set piece. The 8th one was a set piece. The 6th one, 25 yards out. So the fact that you had more goals doesn't really mean anything because if you look at the goals, none of them stood out.
That's time.
All right. Great debate from both competitors. We started with Andy on this one. So Jacob, your 1 minute closing begins whenever you start talking.
Again, the reason this one holds up and it resonates is because it was a miracle. It's called the Miracle of Istanbul. AC Milan was able to go up 3 goals to nil. Do you like my little soccer reference there? Before the first half ended, Liverpool was able to come back and tie it up by the end of the game. The last 20 minutes, nothing happened goal-wise, but it was so exciting. Both teams were fighting back and forth. Then you had overtime. Still, both teams were fighting back and forth. It was 55-45% possession. 22 shots, 10 on target for Liverpool, 15 shots, 7 shots on target for AC Milan. Like these two were going back and forth. And then you have the amazing penalty kicks. The great job by both goalies, really, to get stops. And then, of course, the last one, AC Milan shot it, and the goalie was able to stop it. It was just nail-biting from start to finish.
All right. So now we go over to Andy. Your 1 minute closing begins just whenever you start talking.
Yeah, the way you've talked about the goals being scored, teams work for hours in training on their set pieces. They always have. It's a huge tactical play in football. So you can't really dismiss that as a not exciting goal. That's a very well worked, very tactically smart move to do. Same as the counter-attack. When it's pulled off correctly, it's devastating. It's actually extremely exciting to watch. And there's multiple examples of that. You talk about the Liverpool goals being more exciting. Not sure that sort of deflected strikes and rebounded penalties are that exciting, to be honest. And at the end of the day, it's really the zeitgeist of a very fortunate 6-minute incident that's been captured by everyone against 90 minutes of some of the greatest artists ever to play the game playing it. And those certainly were for Benfica, Real Madrid, plus the fact that we are winning and losing leads in exactly the same way as we are in the Liverpool match. So overall, I still have to say that 1962 provides more.
All right. So, great debate by both. Really back and forth, great rebuttals. So let's go over to Haven on this one. Who do you have taking this point?
I have Andy taking this point because when he talked about it in the first 2 rounds, you could tell that he remembers actually watching this match. And Jacob, it just seemed like he was probably like reading facts that he read somewhere. He brought a lot of facts up, but it just seems like Andy was actually experienced the match, watched it a couple of times, and he was able to talk more factually than Jacob was to me. So I give it to Andy.
All right, now let's go over to Kevin.
I actually agree with Haven. Jacob, you brought a lot of facts. I'm a sucker for a Cinder, but I could feel the passion in Andy's Benfica versus Real Madrid 1962. It's like he said, maybe yours is the game, Jacob, that you'd pick if you were making a Hollywood movie. The way Andy could remember the word and the order they were scoring, you brought a lot of facts, but I felt like, I could have probably gone and pulled those off Wikipedia myself. So I'm going to give this point to Andy.
So with that, we have a 1-1 tie going into our third question, which will be in the category of cricket. And your question is, what was the biggest upset in the Cricket World Cup? So we're going to start with Jacob on this one. Your 1 minute begins whenever you start talking.
So first off, I want to clarify, all my stats are coming from ESPN.com and goal.net, stuff like that. I don't use Wikipedia. It's not reputable. But anyways, going into the biggest upset in Cricket World Cup, I'm going to go with one that I did not see because I didn't see either of these when they happened. I actually just recently watched them. But this back in 1983, India does the unthinkable and upsets the West Indies to win the Cricket World Cup. It was a great story, great Hollywood story, if you want to call it that. But still, when it happened, it propelled India to be a powerhouse in cricket, and it really helped build the game of cricket for years on end.
You got 10 seconds.
Oh, I'm done.
All right.
All right, sounds good. So now we'll go over to Andy. Your 1 minute begins whenever you start talking.
Sadly for me, I have to talk about England losing now. So we are going to go to 1992. England are playing Zimbabwe, little, quite a small country in cricketing terms. 18 successive defeats. They take on England's side, sort of launch with the batting pattern, the opening of Graham Gooch and Ian Botham. Plus, they've been spun out for a relatively low total. Should be easy sailing, but of course, we're England and we don't do things easily in tournaments. So, to put it nicely, we fucked it, and Zimbabwe beat us. It was painful. It was very painful. I say I didn't watch it, but I can imagine it would have been painful at the time. And that is it. That's, the Minnows on a terrible run of form, having been rattled out for a low total, somehow managed to win the game. That's an upset for me. That's a massive upset in more ways than one.
All right, good openings from both competitors. Now we go into our 5 minute open debate. The timer will start whenever somebody starts talking.
All right, so Andy, this is the biggest thing I have against your pick, which, probably a good pick. Again, I didn't watch this tournament, but I did do some research, and you didn't pick the right upset in that World Cup. I mean, if you're going to go with the 1992 World Cup, why didn't you go Pakistan beating England in the championship? Because that was a much better upset than Zimbabwe beating them in the last game, a game that didn't mean anything. Both teams had clinched their spots in the next round, or both spots. England had a spot in the next round. Zimbabwe was out. So it was literally a game that didn't mean anything. They just had to play it.
Okay. Well, I guess we're looking at upset in sort of two different ways there. I think you're seeing it, you'll bring the occasion into it. whereas I'm sort of focusing a bit more generally on the stature of the teams and the fact that you would not expect the lower ranked team on bad form to win. So in that case, I don't think the occasion necessarily matters. Zimbabwe are a much, much smaller cricketing nation than Pakistan. And I would say that by the time the final comes around against Pakistan, having already seen England become vulnerable to these losses, I would suggest that that makes the final defeat less surprising because we know it's possible. In terms of yours, what I'll throw back to this, India beating the West Indies in the 1983 final, you say the unthinkable, except India had already beaten the West Indies in a group stage game in the same tournament. So it's not so much of an upset if it's only happened a few weeks earlier. Not to mention that whilst India, to be fair, are not a massive cricketing country at this stage, they still have very good players in their squads. Sunil Gavaskar's opening their batting, one of the all-time great Indian batsmen. Kapil Dev is in the middle order, who's one of the all-time great Indian captains. The man, his name escapes me, unfortunately. It's something like Roger Bonney or something like that. I'll have to check that. Highest wicket taker in the entire tournament. So they have quality in their squads, and they've already beaten the West Indies in the tournament. So I don't really see it as much of an upset with all those things taken into account. Whereas Zimbabwe, small nation, 18 successive defeats, no real star power, Gibble, Take and Andy Flower up against England, with world-class opening batsmen and top-class spinners, that should never be happening.
All right. So, Andy, I love that you brought up that they played before because I found this out too while studying. So, yeah, they did play twice. The first game, the West Indies destroyed them by 66 runs. Flat out destroyed them. And then the next game that they played was right towards the end of the group stage. And again, just like with your match, everyone's seedings had already been settled. West Indies won that pool. India was going to be second place. So again, I wasn't there. I don't know if the West Indies weren't playing full strength, like what happens a lot when you have everything clinched. But India was able to win by 34 runs. Okay, but still a game that really didn't matter that much because everything was seeded. They were able to go in to the championship game against the West Indies, and they also beat your favorite England. So they go on to the West Indies. Everyone's already picking the West Indies to destroy them because they were a dominant powerhouse. While yes, India had some great players, the West Indies, everyone on their team was a great player. This team had won the previous 2 World Cups. They had been a dominant powerhouse in cricket. Everyone knew that they were going to win. I was listening to an interview talking to the head player on the Indian team. Their coach literally told them, "Hey guys, we made it to the championship. We're going up against the West Indies. If we lose, they're going to give us 2,800 rupees. If we somehow win, they'll give us 5,000. So everyone get ready to spend your 2,800 rupees." They weren't expecting to win that game. Again, with yours, England had just lost the game before. They were already a little bit beaten up, already a little bit down on themselves. So they were probably looking at, hey, let's just go on to the next game. We're not even worried about Zimbabwe. Let's worry about the next step because we already know we're in. We already know.
All right, great debate from that category of cricket. So let's go back to Kevin first. Who wins this next point?
We haven't done closing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I am brains fried at the moment. So we started out with Jacob, so we're going to go with Andy for his closing argument. Your 1 minute begins whenever you start talking.
Yeah, trying to sort of think back to all the points you've just made in that. So India winning the match in the group stages, I think, does kind of negate the upset of yours quite a bit. And I think when you come down to a World Cup, I don't think this mentality that you're speaking about, where some people don't focus as much or want to move on to the next game, that simply doesn't exist in top level sports in a World Cup. So, England aren't thinking it's just Zimbabwe. England have to win because everyone back home is expecting you to win the World Cup match, and you as a squad are expecting to win the World Cup match. It's a group stage. You have to get the points. Same thing with the West Indies versus India in that time. There are no meaningless matches, save for a third place playoff or whatever in World Cup. So the mentality does not affect anything there. So you have a talented India squad.
Time.
All right, good closing from Andy. Now let's go over to Jacob. Your 1 minute begins whenever you start talking.
So you just said that teams don't have meaningless games. If you look at the World Cup, if a team has already clinched their stage in the second game and then go on to the third game, they've already clinched. Well, yes, they'll start off hot. They usually tend to sit their stars towards the end of the games. I mean, if you look at every sport, everyone rests when they don't have to. It happens football, basketball, baseball. Every sport, people rest if they don't have to play because they don't want to risk getting injured. And it's the exact same with cricket. Again, you need points. If England were to win that game against Zimbabwe, they'd have had 2 more points. They would have been 1 point away from winning that group with New Zealand winning it. Had they have lost that game, which they did lose that game, they were still 6 points above the third place team, which I cannot think of off the top of my head. There was nothing that they could have done to get up higher or go down lower. And again, with the West Indies, did you say time?
Yep.
All right, great argument from both competitors. Now we go over to our judges. To Kevin first. What do you think of this round, and who takes their second point here?
I'll keep it short because I don't know anything about cricket really. And what I do know is just what I read studying for this. But the point that Jacob made about why not go, Andy, with the Pakistan over England in the championship game. I understand what you're saying about that there are no meaningless games, but Jacob's exactly right in that every sport that I know of, we always rest our players to reduce the risk of injury and exhaustion. That's just smart in all sports. So I have to give Jacob the point. And
all right, so that's 1 for Jacob. Let's go over to Haven.
I think it's your time, bro, to go first.
Oh, all right then. This one I'm gonna have to agree with. I'm gonna have to agree with Kevin here. I really think Jacob's hammered home the point that every team and every sport is gonna have a meaningless game. The thing that really brought it home for Jacob, for me personally, was the quote he gave about the 2,800 rupees. That really sold his argument about how they didn't really think they were going to end up winning that match, but then they did. So, and that really brought home the point of the biggest upset in World Cup history. So I'm going to end up giving this one to Jacob as well. All right, and with that, Jacob taking a 2-1 lead. Going into our 4th category, which is going to be in the category of the NCAA, more so NCAA football, so college football. And the question was the best Heisman winner since 2010. So far, the best Heisman winner of this current decade so far. So we started with Jacob last. We started with Jacob last time. So let's go to Andy. Your opening argument will begin whenever you start talking.
Okay, I'm picking the 2010, so it would have been the first Heisman winner of the decade, Cam Newton, quarterback, now at the Carolina Panthers. No one has a list of achievements like this man since he's come into the NFL. He's an MVP. He's a Rookie of the Year. He's a multiple award-winning player. He's versatile. He rushes. He passes well. He's an excellent modern-day quarterback. Very athletic, very technical, and ever since he's come into the NFL, he has smashed records for passes in games. He's broken records for rushing in games, and he's basically dominated the field from where he is in a way that no one else has been able to step up and do just yet. Add to that the fact that he is a fantastic role model for the community. He is definitely the sort of player that you look to bring through and you look to see as a great coming through from Heisman. So
all right. So we now go over to Jacob. Your 1 minute will begin whenever you start talking.
First off, Andy, if Cam Newton is your role model, you need to rethink your life choices. The old grandmother of the league right now, that's exactly what everyone wants to be. But when I was thinking with this question, best Heisman winner since 2010, I'm not really looking at what he's done in the NFL. I'm looking at what he did the year he won the Heisman. And of the list that we had from 2010 till now, really one stood out above the rest. And that would be famous Jameis Winston, the quarterback for the Florida State University Seminoles. I almost said Sentinels. Wrong team. Is now playing for the Bucks. Not as good, but again, I'm just looking at the year he won it, his freshman year, whenever he was able to lead the Florida State to the last BCS national championship game against the Auburn Tigers and beat them there. He won it in 2013, so just a couple years afterwards, and he did it as a freshman. Only the second person ever to do that.
All right. Good opening arguments by both gentlemen. So now, guys, we get into your 5-minute open debate, which begins whenever you guys start talking.
Again, Andy, I still want you to let me know why you consider Cam Newton a great role model. I still can't get past that. I mean, the guy gets hurt, sees his team do great, and then he's like, yeah, I've been fighting this injury for a while now, so I'm just going to sit out for I don't know how long, but I'm going to sit out for a while. And then his team's doing great. But anyways, we're not talking about that. We're talking about which one's better. And between Jameis Winston and Cam Newton, if you look at their stats, they're very similar, especially in the year that they won the Heisman. Jameis was 66.9%, Cam 66.1% in passing. Jameis with 4,057 yards, 40 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Cam with 2,854 yards, 30 touchdowns. So very similar. We can't really argue, which stats are better. So what I think gives Jameis the better the push is because, well, yes, both of them went 14-0. Both of them went undefeated. If you look at how Jameis was able to handle the teams he played against, literally that team never played, or the starting lineup never played in the fourth quarter of any game up until the last game of the season, the BCS National Championship, because they were just blowing teams out of the water. You look at Auburn's schedule. I mean, they had so many games. The second game of the season, Mississippi State, 17-14. Clemson 27-24. I mean, you look at these games, they had a lot of blowouts, but against really small nobody schools. Once they played people in their conference, they really didn't have any blowout wins. Every game was close. You look at Florida State, they were blowing out everybody.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the team sort of stats, I mean, that's sort of for everyone. But like you say, individually, statistics, they are very similar. So I am going to have to go and say I am going to make this about what he's done since winning the Heisman. I mean, he was fantastic in his Heisman year. Absolutely fantastic. He then went on and broke all manner of rookie records in his first year in the NFL, the year later, 2011. He broke rookie records for passing. He broke rookie records for rushing yards. He was the rookie of the year. He made the step up instantly. If we think about this, who's the best player to have won the Heisman? This is the player who went in and was immediately ready, not just to take part in NFL, to shine in the NFL. He was a man amongst boys in the college football, and then he went and joined the men, and he showed them up as well. He made them look like boys as well. In terms of the role model stuff, I literally read he was a Christian. That's all I got it from. He may or may not be a good person in another life. Jameis Newton, I'd say the verdict's pretty well out there on whether he's good or bad. So, but yeah, in terms of a man who is continuously breaking records, his first game as an NFL quarterback, he broke Peyton Manning's first game records he didn't just break it, he absolutely annihilated it. And this is Peyton Manning. Even I've heard of Peyton Manning. So, you know, in terms of his throughout the whole of the sport, he is the one who is continually setting new bars and setting new achievements and continually adapting his game as he goes on. From winning the Heisman, he's established himself as a senior NFL superstar, really.
Yes, but he doesn't have a winning mentality, because if you watch Super Bowl 50 when they played the Denver Broncos, I mean, that game goes down to one play. He fumbles the ball, and instead of diving to get it, he sees Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware going for it, and he backs up. He's like, I'm not getting in the middle of that. I'm going to die if I do that. And then if you watch his interview afterwards, he didn't answer anything. That's not a winning mentality with that one thing. You know, he has a lot of fun when he wins. But when he loses, you know, to have a winning mentality, you have to be able to take a loss also. Cam has showed that he's not able to do that. And since that great MVP year, he hasn't been able to do anything. And he's had a great team behind him. He's had a great coach. Jameis has not had a great NFL career, but he really hasn't had a good team around him. He's had some good receivers, but he's never had a great coach up until now. Hey,
But
was
if
that time?
he's good enough, he would still
Sorry,
be.
yeah, that's time. Sorry.
Oh,
Time.
sorry.
All right, 5 minutes are up, so we are going to go to Jacob first for your closing arguments. Your closing argument begins whenever you start talking.
Again, when I got this question, I was understanding it more of who had the better year, the year they won that Heisman. Jameis Winston definitely had the better year. He blew out his opponents when Cam was not able to. If you look at average, he averaged about 289 yards per game, throwing Cam 203. Well, yes, Cam was able to run, so was Jameis. Jameis was just an elite passer and a good runner, whereas Cam was a mediocre thrower, but a good runner. One big thing was he was big, so it was hard to take him down. But still, push him out of bounds. That happens so many times. And while, yes, Jameis doesn't have the greatest speeches before the game, because you know what this is? This is W. We're going to eat a W. He hasn't had as much controversy as Cam Newton has.
All right, so we go back to Andy for his 1 minute closing argument. You can begin whenever you start talking.
In terms of the controversy one, I'm pretty sure I read about at least 2 sexual assault investigations or groping investigations against James Newton. So there's a little bit going on there. I also interpreted the question a different way. I read it as the best player since 2010 who's won the Heisman. In that case, it's Cam Newton, who, like I say, when he steps up and makes that transition to the NFL, he throws 400 yards in his first game, breaks Peyton Manning's records. His passing yards was also record-breaking. That's a 61-year record he broke. In the season, he ran for 14 touchdowns. That's a 35-year-old record, which he broke. And he throws for 4,000 yards. He's the first person ever to do that. So he not only wins the Heisman, he goes on to build an MVP career for himself, which I don't think can be tarnished too much by one bad Super Bowl. I think the career stats speak for themselves in terms of his winning.
Okay, so 4th round is done. I will give my 2 cents first. This was a great argument. I think this was probably the best one we've had yet. But by the thinnest of margins, I got to go with Jacob here, give him the edge on this one. I thought he had much better rebuttals to Cam Newton's inconsistencies throughout his career. The stat about Jameis and the FSU starters not playing until the 4th quarter, until the national championship game, that was also a big glaring difference between both Cam Newton and Jameis Winston. So by the thinnest of margins, I'm going to give this one to Jacob. Haven, how about you?
I'm going to give this one actually to Andy, and it's surprising because, Jacob's American. But Andy just kept hitting the points where Cam Newton, all the accomplishments he had in the NFL. And we're talking about who won the Heisman and who was the better NFL, who's people going to know. And just Andy just had more points on that end, because I don't even know who the fuck James Winston is. But, Cam Newton, disagree. But that dude's a superstar in the NFL. So, Andy on the edge to me.
All right. So it comes down to Kevin. Who you got on this one?
When it's kind of interesting, Andy, that you interpreted the question the way you did, because I interpreted it the way that Jacob did. But since you interpreted that, I'll take it and take it. You brought up some good how his achievements in the NFL Rookie of the Year, rusher and passer, modern day. I don't know about the whole role, but that's me. But I'm going to go with Jacob on this one.
Ooh. All right, with that, and your winner today, Jacob West. Jacob getting into the win column here in Sports Brawl, taking down Andy, who put up a hell of a fight. It came down to the wire, but with the final score of 3-1, Jacob takes this match. So we're going to get into our post-match interviews. We're going to start with our winner today. Jacob, you get your first win under your belt. How do you feel about that?
I am feeling great. I'm not going to lie. Kevin, you had me. I seriously thought you were going to give it to Andy there. No, these were great arguments. Andy, as soon as you started saying, I'm interpreting this as everyone, or his entire career, college and NFL, I'm like, damn it, he's going to beat me because James hasn't done anything in NFL. No, but thank you for letting me earn this win, because we do this 5 more times, and it's, I win 2, you win 3. That was great.
Yeah, of course. This question could be interpreted. That last question could have been interpreted in many different ways. It could have been interpreted as who had the best Heisman winning season, who's had the best career since winning the Heisman. But you both had different answers. But for me, they both worked. So congratulations on your win. You're 1-1. Anyone you want to call out? Maybe anyone you're looking forward to face next here in Sports Brawl?
So I have, this one on my record that is really making me feel upset in my stomach. And I was looking at the mirror this morning, and I just saw William Dafoe standing there, and he's like, Jacob, avenge me. So Cody, I am definitely looking forward to playing you again, to avenge my loss. I don't believe I'll be able to get you next. But just let it be known, I'm coming for him.
Jacob bringing some heat, calling out Cody Newberry. Wow, how about that? But yeah, we'll see what we can do. Maybe Cody will be next. Maybe he won't. But we'll see. We'll see what happens there. Now we're gonna go over to our unfortunate loser today, Andy. Look, Andy, you played a hell of a match. You took, every single topic, it went down to the wire. You end up taking that soccer one, and you lost the last 2, I think, by the slimmest of margins. So how do you feel about your performance today?
Yeah, I actually enjoyed it a lot more than I thought. I was talking to Jacob sort of off screen at one point, and basically just sort of agreeing how difficult it is to sort of revise for some of these categories that you don't necessarily know about. But in the end, quite happy that I argued them respectably. I don't feel like I made a fool of myself at any stage with them. It was a very polite debate. Fantastic to play against someone like that who's going to let you speak and bring good arguments back at you. So that was a pleasure. That was. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was interesting to come out of the comfort zone, and I enjoyed it a lot. And congratulations to Jacob, obviously, for what was hopefully a hard-fought win for him in the end. So.
Absolutely. Look, you proved yourself to be a fierce debater on all fronts, whether it's American sports or more international sports. So, we'd love to have you back. If you've been looking around this community, is there anybody you might want to face next, want to throw a challenge out to?
I'd probably like to play someone else who isn't an American, maybe even up the playing field a little bit more, sort of for both players. So have maybe sort of more of an international theme to the match. Possibly even, I mean, we generally have a no contest rule in this, but possibly this is the format, given that I'm taking it a little less seriously than the movies. Maybe this is a format where even me and Michael face off in it. So, so someone else maybe from the Americas or from Australia or somewhere, maybe just to sort of even it out, be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. We will be sure to get you in sometime in the near future. You proved yourself to be a fierce debater. Just came up a little bit short right there. But judges, great match today. We're going to start here with Kevin. Overall thoughts on the match?
First off, sorry about the technical issues. I must be in a really bad spot.
It's all good.
I jumped off right there. But yeah, anyway, I wanted to say, Jacob, I thought you presented a really good argument about Jameis Winston. But anyway, good job, guys. You did a really good job about all your arguments. Whether you knew or not, you presented it in a really good way. I had a really hard time, so you did a great job, and good luck in the future.
Absolutely. And Haven, thoughts on the match?
Yeah, it was a good match. Andy's first match here, he got the loss, but I believe this was Jacob's second match. He got the win. I think next time Andy plays, if he uses up more minutes, talking about facts and actually, talking, not letting his competitor talk so much, but Jacob, had his facts. If he goes in, it comes down to, it's their second match, first match playing, they got to get comfortable, and they got to make us, feel like they know what they're talking about, so they'll get better at that. But it was a great match.
Absolutely. Yeah, great match all around. Great job to both competitors. Great job to the judges, too, for giving us good input. But yeah, that's going to be the end of today's episode of Sports Brawl. From Jacob, from Andy, from Kevin, from Haven, I've been Thomas. Join us next time. See you guys.